How to use live filter layers in Affinity Photo. Well, what are layers anyway? Well, layers are these: triangles, text, rectangles, pixel layers, whole range of different things, fill layers. There's a whole load of special layers as well. So where are the layers panel? Window and layers. But here's the layer, and you've got fill layers, passing layers, but you've also got this, live filter layers, new live filter layers. And you've got blurs, sharpens, etc. Now you think, well, I've got filters. Well, filters are great, but if you go to a filter, apply the effect, basically that's it. Which is fine if you only done one or two things, you can always undo and come back to the original state. But say you've done 400 operations, variety of things, and then realise you made a mistake. Well, the best way is live filter layers, because you can correct that mistake. You can't do it so easily if you blurred it and that's it. So let's just go select nothing. So no layer selected. So if I select a layer, select it like that. You see it's selected there. Deselect everything. And you can go to layer, new live filter layer, and blur. And there's a whole range of them. But I'm going to go with Gaussian blur for most of the examples. Most work well with that. So Gaussian blur, and now the effect is applied as a layer. You can see it just listed. It's called live Gaussian blur. In here it just says Gaussian blur. I wish it said live as well, but it doesn't. By default, nothing's happened. You can't see anything, but anything below it, anything below this layer will be modified by this effect. And that's a key thing to remember. So you can move this radius, and you can change it, say 38. And you can see now everything below has been blurred. You can push it up to 100. You can also click here and put 200 or 300. Obviously it becomes a bit extreme, and put it down to there. You'll also notice you've got some other commands along here. You've got preserve. Now this is an old one. I'm just going to click this one. Preserve alpha. So click that. You think, well, what's happened? Well, it's still blurring. And you can notice the blurring effect. That's why I created a design with some dots in it. So if I reduce that down, you can see the dots there. It's still blurring it, but it's just anything beyond that is not being blurred. So if you want the blurring effect applied to the entire design further out than the actual alpha for those shapes or layers, you can see the blur there. Click there, it's sharp. Not, and so on. And that's the same for most of the effects. You can find that works well. You'll also notice you've got here opacity. You can change that. So if you don't want the full-on maximum 41 off, you can reduce it. But that's not always the case in some places where you've got an effect where you can't really reduce it in that way. This is slightly different. The opacity just reduces it down, so it looks less blurry. And you can see the blurring effect, just subtle. Just it creates a nice subtle effect. It's not the same as that or the setting of this. So I'm just going to push that back up again. Again, you can see you can't achieve exactly the same if you've changed just the radius. The opacity is useful. Also, if you let's push this up, you've got blend modes. So you can go for darken, multiply. That's a whole new topic. Blending modes. Blending modes and opacity runs through everything when it comes to layers. And there's different ones. You've got hard mix and so on. But you can create some interesting designs simply by changing that. You've got negation, reflect, colour, normal. I'm just going to go with normal. That's the default, normal. So you've got this. You've also got merge. Merge is an unusual one. So if I click it, I'm just going to click it, panel goes. Then you try and change it, you can't. It's fixed, it's merged, it's become a layer itself, which is fine, it's useful. But if you don't want that, because you can't edit it anymore, it's no longer live. So just delete it. I'm just going to delete it now. Back to that. Let's just create it again. So layer, new live filter layer, blur, Gaussian blur. I mean, it's useful if that's what you want. And again, you can blur that. Also, you've got an option here, delete. So delete does what it says. Delete, it's gone. You can do exactly the same by just deleting it here. Just go to select the actual layer and delete it. It's just a normal layer that you can delete. So layer, new light filter layer, blur, Gaussian blur. And you can put the radius up again. Now you notice what I've done here. I've actually selected. Now I was going to go to that later, but let's just undo that. I don't want that. Make sure you don't select anything. If you've got something selected, the effect is applied to that layer, which is fine because it's useful. But here, got nothing selected, new light filter layer, blur, Gaussian blur, again, apply to everything. And you notice at the last one, I've got reset. So I've just increased this. Reset, all it does is put it back to 0. So a lot of those are really, they're useful, but I mean, you can always just move the radius back. But sometimes some of the other commands, some of the other panels have got a lot more sort of sliders. You might end up with a bit of a mess. So reset is a quick and easy way just to reset it back to that start point. So let's just blur it now and set it to 40 or so. So you've got this effect and it's applied to all the layers below. Well, say you only want it applied to this one. I'm just going to go to the triangle. I just want it to not apply to the triangle. So just drag it down and you can see as you select it, selected, hold down the mouse and drag down. And then you'll notice what happens as you go past the triangle, you get this blue line and release. Now the rectangle and the text are blurred. The triangle is left alone. It's untouched. And you can do the same. So again, highlighted, drag down and just drag, and you've got that thin blue line, release. Now the text is no longer blurred, but just the rectangle. Now you can drag it down all the way to the bottom. If you want to have your effects down the bottom, you might want to keep them there for, perhaps to use. So you just can put it down there. Another option, if you don't want the effect to be applied, is you can always click here. That's visibility. So you can remove. So let's put it back up the top again. So drag it up. You can drag it up to the top again. If you don't want to see it, click there. It's still there, but it's not being applied. Also, you'll notice you've got this as well, a little lock. So you can lock it as well, if that's what you want. So you can't change it. Just click that, get rid of it, and click that to remove it. Not permanently. If you want to permanently remove it, you can always just click here in the delete down there. That's another option. But also, say you want to apply it just to a particular shape. You don't want to have it messing around in the layers panel, sort of here, there and everywhere, because sometimes you might be working, adding lots of layers, and then you start getting where you think, oh, why is that blurred? Oh, it's because you can apply it to one shape. If you want one shape to modify, and you can just drag it down. Say I want the text. Oops. You can also bring the panel up again by just clicking. Just click it. That's all you need to do, just click there. Now sometimes it seems to ignore. Sometimes I use double click and then it brings it up. Sometimes a click should be sufficient. But it does have a mind of its own sometimes. I want the Gaussian blur there, drag it down so I can just drag it on. So you can just see there. It's just dragged onto it. And now you can see you've got the Gaussian blur with the text there. You can undo. You can see if you drag it down there, you put that there as well. Notice it's different. There's a subtle difference. There's some, just by dragging on or just inside can make a big difference. So let's just put that again up there. So you see if I drag and I drag onto the whole thing like that, you'll notice the blurring effect seems to be inside. It is inside. So the blurring effect, you've got this weird blur inside the text, which you might want, you might not want. But you can also drag it up here and put it on there. And the effect, the blur effect, is more like the one we had before, where it's applied outwards as well, outside of the alpha of that text. So you can see you've got two options there for when you put. So let's just do the same. So Gaussian blur, drag this up, and again, highlight the whole thing. Oops, bring that there. you can see the blur effect is only applied to the triangle now, but it's inside, and you've got all those dots inside. So if I expand this out, you can see then the Gaussian blur. Oh, I've got two there now. That's strange. Let's just delete one of them. There. Delete that. Let's just go right back to things. So make sure you've got that. Layer, new live filter layer, blur, Gaussian blur. And now the effect there, let's just apply like that. So you've got that effect there. But you can, say, just drag it up there, put it on there instead. On there. And you can see it is different. So just drag there, there, or there, depending on what you want to achieve. So just try them out if that's the effect you want, which is great. If you want the other one, drag it there, onto the actual shape there. What you can do, you don't have to have just one. So you've got this Gaussian blur, you can always right click, and you can delete. You can also duplicate. So duplicate, and then you've got two, or duplicate again. And you can see now the blurring effect is more intense. Each time you apply it, the blurring effect is applied to the blurring effect, applied to the blurring effect. And you can see you get some really unusual blur effects. Also, what you can do is you can click there, and this is independent. So this Gaussian blur is different from the other Gaussian blurs. So you can turn around and say, oh, I just want that reduced, or maybe increase, or maybe different blend modes. So let's just go for colour burn. So you can use that. Go to this one, click there, and you can change this, and you can see you can get different effect there. Again, go down here, maybe difference or divide, and so on. You can actually build up a complex set of effects just by using multiple copies of the Gaussian blur, but they're all independent. So you change one, you're not affecting any of the others, other than the obviously the end result applied to that triangle. Now, if you decide, you know what, I don't want all of them or any of them, you can always just delete them, and they're all gone. And that's Gaussian blur. Of course, there's other things as well. What you can do, let's just select a different shape. So another shape, go to layer, new live filter layer, and this time I'm going to go with, say, a 12. Gaussian blur is great. You can mix as well. So you can have 12s and blurs. So you don't have to have just one live filter layer. You can have 10 all built up. And obviously, depending on the order, the effect will be applied in different ways. So again, you've got here radius, and you can modify that. And you can distort the origin point as well. You can do exactly the same as you can in filters, but this time it's live. Now this preserve alpha, if I click that, you can see what happens. So before, that's the default preserve alpha not on. The effect is applied, extends beyond that original rectangle. So you can move it around, distort it. Obviously you can set these values up like that. Preserve alpha, the effect is only applied within the actual design, which is fine. So you can create a variety of different sort of designs purely by using preserve alpha, or turn it on, turn it off, so on. Again, you can do exactly the same, merge, delete, etc. So if I go merge here, so merge, that's it. If I try and change it, I can't change it. Personally, I very rarely use the merge. Click there, just see again, it's locked. So the only way to get rid of it is just delete it. That's why I don't generally use the merge. I find it slightly... So layer, again, live filter layer, distort and twirl. And you can apply the effect. Like that. And close. But again, you can duplicate it. So if you want, just right click and duplicate. And that will add an additional twirl to the twirl. So you can create a variety of different designs. Again, click there just to bring that up. Change the angle. Modify the radius. Change the origin point. And you can see you can achieve some really truly odd designs. Again, you're working on that rectangle. That's the only one that's affected. Everything else, triangle, they're all above. Now what you can also do is you can go here to a layer, New light filter, blur and Gaussian blur. So I'm just going to apply Gaussian blur. And the Gaussian blur there. Now you'll see what's happened. Slightly odd, it doesn't apply it to the selected layer. It puts it above it, which you may or may not want. But again, you can go here and you can drag down, you can drag it on, and the result is different if you go with this one or if you go with this one here. So you can achieve different things by putting it on here or putting it on here. Up to you. And also you can change the position. So you can go down here, put it down like that. So you can blur one, but you're not blurring the other. Sometimes it's a more powerful effect or not, or just put it below. It may or may not have any effect. You can see it does obviously have a slight change when you move it up or down the actual layer order. And of course you decide, well, I don't want the Gaussian blur there. I can always drag it up there and put it onto the text instead. You can move them around, change them, tweak them in countless ways. Also what you can do, let's just delete that. Say you want this, I want the text and the rectangle to be modified, but I don't want it to be put in between. So let's just remove these twirls. Again, it's best to always start right at the beginning. So you've got this text and rectangle. What you can do, right click and you can group. You've got a group now and say, let's go over here, layer, new light filter layer, say blur and Gaussian blur. And again, the twirl or any of the other effects, the blur in this case, is applied. It's applied to that group. So if I click that, you can see Gaussian blur, it's inside the group. Now if I decide, oh, you know what, I want that group to be above the triangle, for whatever reason. So you can go over here, you can then drag this group up above the triangle. Even though the blur is applied and the triangle is below it, because it's in the group, it's not going to modify the triangle. The triangle is untouched. And you could obviously right click, duplicate that. So create another one. And you could do exactly the same. So right click there, you've got group, another group, and you could apply effect to that. So layer, new light filter layer, distort and twirl. And you can change the alpha, the angle, radius. And again, change that, move the origin point. It's one of those weird effects. The twirl, you have to modify the origin before you actually see anything sometimes. And close. Again, you can see the twirl effect is only applied at the triangle. So if you move it around this group, you can move it up here, it doesn't modify the other layers. If you want to preserve all these effects, what you can do, go to File and Save As. Use Save As, save it to the Affinity Photos format, AF Photo. Then when you come back into the document, you'll notice you've got all the effects, live filter layers, etc. Now if you want to just export it without worrying about the effects, just got the design itself, just go to Export and just save it to PNG. That will not save the live filter effects. All that will save it is via the Save As AF Photo. So once you've used your live filter layers, what if you don't want them anymore, but you still want the effect? You decide, you know what, that's it. I think personally, you can keep it like this, of course, but there might be things you want to do. You want to apply brush strokes to it. You want to apply other effects to it that are not available. So filters, distort and all these sort of things. Well, what you can do, you can rasterize it. You just go to Layer and you can go down here to Rasterize. So select the group or the live filter layer and obviously the image itself. And then you go to Rasterize and then that's it. It's turned into a pixel layer. You've got your effect, you've got everything, but now it's frozen. That is it. You can now go to filters. You can apply various other things as well. You can modify it in other ways. Live filter layers can be used in countless ways. Great way of combining different things, different ways. They're really worth exploring. I hope this has helped. Hope this has explained something. If you've got any questions about them, and it's possible I've completely missed a complete area of live filter layers, please let me know in the comments below. It's always great to know, and then obviously I can work on maybe another tutorial about how to explain that side of it as well. Bye.